plan, and we've all received copies of that. And it's, I'm telling you, going through it, I thought it would be like nighttime reading, but it really is interesting to see all the projects that are going on. And I think we all have probably some questions about it. I know I do, but I really appreciate getting that early. And thank you for that, Commissioner. It's been, give us a chance to get caught up on all this. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, because we have viewers as well, that this is electronic, and we've done very well, and Darlene's been fantastic, and we've been able to get through all the previous meetings very well. The last meeting, I think, went good, our first public hearing. So we are on electronic, so if we have a glitch or two, hang with us. The meeting, as I said, is also being recorded for anyone who's watching. It's available on the committee's YouTube after the meeting is concluded. Remind everyone to make sure that your name is displayed as you like to have it displayed, as you're registered, for those of us who are listening to the people who are talking to us today. Also, one more reminder, which I always need this, is that the Zoom chat is a function that's, we don't use that for substantive discussion because everybody can see it. Okay, let's have an introduction to our committee, and then we'll, a couple of announcements, and then we'll get right into it. Why don't we start, as we always do, with Senator Farren. Good afternoon, Senator Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for everybody for attending. My name is Brad Farren. I represent Senate District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County.
Thank you, Senator. Next, Senator Ben Chipman.
Great. Thank you, Senator Diamond. I'm Senator Ben Chipman. I represent District 27, which is most of the city of Portland.
Thank you. Next, Representative Wayne Perry.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Perry. I represent House District 10, which covers Arundel, Dayton, and most of Lyman.
Thank you, Wayne. Representative Lynn Williams.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Lynn Williams. I represent District 135, which is Bar Harbor, Lemoyne, and Mount Desert.
Thank you. Representative Dustin White. Representative White.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Dustin White. I represent 10 towns in central Aroostook County, and I live in Mars Hill.
Welcome, Dustin. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Representative Mike Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike Perkins. I represent District number 77 out of Oakland and Sydney.
Thank you, Mike. Representative Mark Bryant.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Mark Bryant. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham.
Followed by Representative Bruce White.
Hi, yes, Representative Bruce White, District 109, which is one half of Waterville. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Representative Tom Martin. Tom was having a little trouble with his computer, we know, but don't see him right off. We'll come back when he checks in. Representative Kevin O'Connell.
Thank you, Senator. Kevin O'Connell, District 128, the majority of the city of Brewer.
Thanks, Kevin. And Representative Rich Sebra. Is Rich with us?
Good afternoon, Senator. Representative Rich Sebra, Naples, and the 5 towns in the western part of the Sebago Lake region.
Thank you, Rich. Did we get in touch with Tom Martin? He's able to join us?
He said he asked if we crashed. He lost his connection, so
okay.
He must be trying to get back on.
All right, very good. Want to introduce our analysts, of course, Sam Prower and Karen Netto. Thank you for your work. And then, of course, our clerk, Darlene Simino, who is who's kind of the technician pilot here, and we really appreciate all of her work and her patience with us. Chair Martin, Chair Martin, I didn't leave you out. I was just going to double check to make sure that I had a couple of announcements, but I wanted to ask you, is there anything else we need to do? And then you can introduce yourself at the same time.
No, I think we're great, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Bill. I'm Danny Martin, House Chair of this outstanding committee. I represent House District 150, located in northern Aroostook County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anything else we need to talk about at the moment? I don't think so. I think we've covered everything at this point. So we will welcome Commissioner Van Noot. Please start your presentation.
Thank you much. Just checking technical on my side. Can everyone hear me just fine? That's great. Thank you. I know we have 60 minutes, but my experience with the committee is that if we take less, we don't get in trouble with anyone on the committee. So this is relatively informal. We obviously have some things we want to cover, but with leave of the chairs, we like questions. That's what this is really for, is to get questions. So,
and Commissioner, if you're okay, we'll ask questions as you go along, because it is a rather lengthy 3-year plan. Sure. So we'll do it.
That would be awesome. That's what we prefer.
Good.
I'm going to just kick it off with some, high level kind of setting the stage, and then who's with me is Andy Bickmore. Give him a wave, Andy. Andy is the director of an office that, if you think of the title, you'll know how important it is. It's Results and Information Office. And his office is about 3 doors down from mine. It's within, to his chagrin, it's within yelling distance, right? And we can communicate without any kind of electronic means. He's a key person in organizing this work plan, which is why he's here today. He'll be talking about how we assemble it. I'll spend a little time on funding overview, sources and uses. That's where our paths cross the most, right? How do we pay for things? And we've always considered the committee a key partner in that endeavor. Then Andy will talk about highway and bridge production levels. We kind of call them the widgets. What are we actually producing statewide? And then I'll spend a little time on multimodal. And then we'll wrap up briefly with unmet need. And again, if this all went sideways because of questions, that would be awesome from our perspective, because that's honestly why we're here, is to answer your questions. So
thank you, Commissioner.
With that, this is a big document. If you're one of the few that get hard copies. This is mostly online, but we produce hard copies for the committee and a few select others. If you count it all up, it's 276 pages. Lots going on there. It covers 3 years of work. It also covers all work, and that is sometimes confused by non-committee members. Honestly, we cover the capital projects, obviously, but it also covers all maintenance and operations activities, all planning activities, all executive work. I have what we call a WIN, a work identification number, in there. So everyone at the department can see themselves in this work plan. And that was part of our strategy of just becoming a one DOT. Everybody sees it. And the purpose of this document is to answer the obvious question that we always used to get. Not as much now, but it's still a great question. Geez, we give you $830 odd million a year of various sources of state, federal, and bonding funds. What do you do with it? Where does it all go? That's what this is intended to answer, down to the individual item and dollar level. One thing to think about this on an overview, we put out a new work plan every year. It's a 3-year work plan, but every year we update it because project scopes change, and then we look at what we can add in the 3rd year. Sometimes we move something up for reasons. Sometimes we don't get permits and things drop off. And it's better to not think of it as just a static list of projects. This is really a snapshot of a conveyor belt. This conveyor belt just keeps going. It will, we're looking out beyond the 3 years, and it just keeps going. So the funding is not as much tied with an individual project. Like, it's not like each project has its own bank account, like a Christmas club, and okay, we set this aside. It's more like the funding is the fuel that keeps this conveyor belt going. And so that's something that is important sometimes because a very common question is, for example, geez, if you don't get this bond, which projects are you not going to do? And they think it's already associated. And the true answer is we'll have to reevaluate the whole work plan and decide how slow the conveyor belt is and slow it down, and whether any boxes have to come off the conveyor belt. That's honestly how it works. So this is done, as Andy will describe, with a whole bunch of people over a whole bunch of time. This is we get going, it's, anytime after when August starts, we get going to start producing this work plan. Every year it seems there's always something that makes it difficult to plan. Obviously this year we had the coronavirus and revenues down, and would the federal government give us money or not? What should we plan on or not? I'll describe some of that later. And before I hand it off to Andy, I just want to thank you for the funding you provide. I mean, this conveyor belt doesn't run without you, and without the legislature, and without our congressional delegation. And I need to thank dozens and dozens of people at DOT who make this thing possible. I spend some work on the higher level things. I get involved in details more than Andy would like sometimes, but mostly I stay at a higher level, and the number of people and their expertise is just, we're very fortunate to have them, and they put together a good work plan. So with that,
Commissioner, before you,
Yep.
just a second, Commissioner, that conveyor belt analogy is something that's helpful, I think, for us who are not in the department every day to use. The only question I have is the conveyor belt, when that slows down, are the projects in sequence so that it's obvious what the next project would be or would not be if the conveyor belt came to a stop?
Not always, because the boxes are of different colors and different sizes. And if certain funding doesn't come, for example, light capital paving, we've talked about that a lot. We need cash for that. Generally bonding, because, bonding with a 10-year term, and it's a 7-year asset. So it depends on what kind of fuel. The fuel is blended.
Okay.
And it depends what kind of fuel comes off. And it's not a one-to-one. And that is a frustrating answer, I know, because you just kind of want to know. In general, of course, we like to deliver on what we say. And if we have boxes that are coming due, if they can, that's where we go, right? I mean, we go in series if we can. We can't always.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee before, Commissioner's going to be right with us, and so we can come back to him if we certainly need to. Thank you very much. I guess we're ready to move on.
Sure, Andy, go for it.
All right, I'm just going to share a graphic here that shows the assembly of the work plan. Can everyone see that?
Yep, got it here.
And really, this is our simplified look at the work plan development process. So that gives you an idea. There's a lot that goes into it. As Bruce said, there's 2,180 work items in the work plan. That's not counting the work that we have delivered and are still tracking throughout the systems that we have. We update this every year. So one of the key components of assembling a new work plan is looking at those last 2 years and seeing what's left to be delivered. So in this case, 21 and 22, what we had originally intended for 21 and 22 is a major input into the work plan. Some of those projects have progressed further in design over the past year, and we know a better outlook on those. We have a better estimate. Some of them need more funding. Some of them have a little excess. So we go through, one of the first steps that we go through is a reconciliation process, looking at the assumptions that we made for resources over the 3 years and what we actually received in that first year. So that's from all sources, whether it's a bonding level, the federal allocation that we get. And some of the federal money that we get is is not predictable at all. There's a program called the Highway Infrastructure Program. That's a general fund federal program that we don't know until they pass a yearly budget. We have to make some assumptions. We're never 100% right. So we reconcile those types of things and move forward with our new assumptions, and what results is unprogrammed resources for that 3-year period. So what work can we program against those resources that haven't already been spoken for or aren't supplementing existing projects? That's our first step. Once we have a handle on the money that we have to spend or program, that goes into a process called resource allocation, and that's on the right-hand side of the screen. And that's really done at a senior management level, looking at any number of our asset management process outputs. What's the yearly need for paving, bridge preservation, bridge replacement, some of the multimodal needs that we have upcoming. So we look at all of that and parse out that funding based on the eligibility and the need of the system, and put it in what we term as resource allocation groups, which is roughly about 50 categories where we program from. The middle section of this diagram shows.
Andy.
Yep.
Andy, let me just interrupt for a second, Andy. That resource allocation, that red table there is a tough table to be at, I will tell you. That's where an awful lot of Sophie's choices get made. You know, how much can we invest in, you know, expanding transit? How much has to go to highway? How much, you know, what can we afford for ports? How much bonding do we think is viable, which supports a lot of capital programs? So that is done and ultimately signed off by me. And I just want you to know that that's a tough meeting. Those are tough meetings because there's just not enough to go around, and you have to make choices about how you do the best you can with what you have. So go ahead, Andy. So if there's a problem or a failing, it's my fault, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not Andy's.
You take that. I just want to say to the committee that when Andy's sharing his screen, I lose the list and the possible hand raising. So we'll work as best we can with that, a little bit in the blind. So go ahead. Sorry, Andy.
Yep. So as Bruce said, that directly relates to unmet need. There's a lot of sharp elbows and sad faces at that table. Let's put it that way. You know, everybody's for their individual asset group and trying to do what's best overall for the transportation system. We have a number of committees within the department. There are 4 major committees that get involved with spending those resources that resource allocation process is delineated. They're a highway committee, bridge committee, safety and mobility committee, and the multimodal committee. And I'll just take the highway committee, for example. It's made up of a group of professionals around the department. There's representatives of planning, highway maintenance, highway project development, asset management, taking their respective input and selecting really candidate projects to move forward from the resources that have been allocated to that committee. So you can repeat that along the way. We also have interactions with metropolitan planning organizations, and those are depicted to the right of the committees. They get an allocation for capital and planning work that they have. So the Portland PACs, for example, Portland area, has a set amount of money that they can distribute for projects of their choosing. This all happens within a context of public input through the regional planning organizations and our statewide planning group. We have planners somewhat regionalized that are talking continuously to municipalities and stakeholders in transportation and getting input as to what the needs of the system are and where some of the priorities should be. So each one of these committees comes out with a list of candidates, and that's assembled into a work plan system that we use to to develop the work plan. And one of the major steps that we have to take is to make sure, based on funding eligibility and funding availability, that those projects can be accomplished given the funding that we have. So they're eligible for the funding that we have, and they can be delivered. So those are brought together, and as Bruce said, we look at our widgets. So what did we produce from those resources that were allocated to the individual committees? And we try to balance those throughout the 3 years. We try to look at, some of the assumptions that we made in resource allocation. If we give 50 million to this particular work area, they should be able to accomplish X amount of widgets. And when you get to the other end, sometimes that's not always the amount of widgets that you get for any number of reasons. As we review that group of projects and balance the resources, then it goes to that right back to pretty much that resource allocation team, the core management team, senior management team, for approval. And we then start to put words around that group of projects. So the introduction that you see in the front of the work plan that kind of summarizes what's in the work plan. And then we produce and publish a work plan. And that really, one of the main ways to access the work plan is from the website, from Maine DOT's website. And you can see right now on the right-hand side of the screen here, it's available. And if you click on that, you go to the work plan page. Here, there are a couple interesting things for people to see. There's an interactive work plan where you can go, if you click on this link, you can go to any town and get a listing of the work in that town, as well as some of the accomplishments from the past year in that town. So it will look and see what we delivered in 2020, including some maintenance activities, as well as a listing of projects that are in the next 3 years. If you want to get the actual virtual hard copy, so the printed edition, what we print that book from, you would just click on this PDF here, and you're right into what you'll all recognize as a standard 3-year work plan from the department. So with that, I think, Bruce, you're going to talk about sources and uses of funds.
I am, and setting that up a little bit. I tried to underscore, and as Andy said, there's a lot of Sophie's Choices happening there, and some other programs, understanding that we're not doing what everybody needs or wants. I mean, that's just the nature of what we do. We have devised certain partnership programs that are more demand response. The municipal partnership program, the business partnership program, a planning partnership program. And that's intended if there is a municipality or a business or somebody that just says, yeah, I understand you don't have enough money to do what needs to be done, but this is so important to us that we're willing to partner with you. And they can essentially jump the line, if you will, jump the priorities, if you will. They're not huge programs, but I think they're critically important. I think they provide a safety valve, if you will, because we're making decisions that are just based on asset management and doing the best we can with what we have. And that's just not good enough for some local officials. It's just not. And this gives a program that says, listen, we know we're not doing everything we should, and we can partner with you and figure out how to do it. And sometimes the municipality itself does all the engineering, and we act as a banker, pretty much. We just take a very high level view of like, yes, this meets generally accepted engineering standards and it will be better. Those were designed intentionally to be that safety valve and shift some control to a more local place.
Excuse me, Commissioner, we have a question from Senator Farren.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. Along that same lines that you're talking about, and folks look at that program that you have, Would you say that that's also kind of some familiar or similar to when legislators and politicians submit bills for earmarking specific projects? And kind of, I mean, and I say that with a smile on my face because, you know, we see those every session where people put in specific bills that think that they need to address that. And it kind of derails what the whole committee and the department does with this work plan.
Yeah, it does provide a safety valve for that. That wasn't why it was originally designed. As you know, we've been pretty upfront. Maine, the committee and DOT, Maine DOT has really established a long-term working relationship over years, I think, that says, we know you're doing the best you can with resources, and you know, and we work with you on that, and then we do the best we can putting it in the right place. And right, of course, is in the eyes of the beholder, but I can tell you ours is data driven and based on numbers and engineering and how, you know, traffic and how many people will serve and that kind of stuff. And so the work plan isn't really a political document like it can be in some other states, you know, where and I think that works better. I think that allows long-term planning in the assembly line to keep moving, the conveyor belt to keep moving as smooth as possible. But we know we can't catch everything, like you say, and with something, and so we always, when one of those bills comes up, we will oppose it, you know, an act to put a traffic light at this intersection or an act to fix this specific section of road. But then we'll oppose the bill, but we'll always have a conversation with the sponsor and the constituent that the legislator is working with. Say, listen, we have these partnership programs. So I think it does help. And when you're doing the best you can with what you have, you got to have a safety valve. And so I think that's worked. And we've actually increased them, even though our funding has got more challenging. For example, the municipal partnership program used to have 5 million in it. We upped it to 7 and started changing some of the match requirements to hopefully get more, you know, get more smaller towns involved in it. So yeah, I think it is. I think those programs are really important to allow that kind of dynamic nature that needs to happen when you have a conveyor belt going.
Thanks. Representative Perry has a question.
Yeah, Commissioner. Yeah, I've always thought this was a really good program. Because isn't there usually, I know there's a little bit different formula, but usually isn't most of the time, isn't it like a 50-50 split between DOT and the local community? So that's extra state work that's actually getting paid for by the town. So for us at state level funding, it's really a huge benefit, isn't it?
It is. It's doubling your money, right? I mean, it's doubling state money in a way where the state kind of steps back and say, we're not controlling the whole world. You guys can engineer it. And we act more like a bank. And it's, of course, 100% voluntary. You know, it's only when a municipality wants to do that. So yes, it has been 50-50. We did recently change it to, it can be up to 70% state for towns with certain valuations that just make, you know, big, huge dollars, something that just doesn't fit with their local highway budget and something like that. So
yeah, because I remember a few years back, I think the state partnered with Kennybunk right when I was first on the committee. And it was a pretty big project, I think, redoing 35 down through Kennybunk. So I think that was you know, and Kennybunk was willing to pay half the money. So that was a huge benefit on the state level.
It is that we could provide a map of all the dots of all the projects that have happened over the years. And it has been a hugely popular and I think important program. Getting to the kind of the funding overview, I won't go into huge detail in each one of these. This, believe it or not, is simplified in terms of our funding mix. And normally, I'll start at 12 o'clock and kind of go clockwise, just around this chart and just hit on each. The big green and the light green that you see there, that's the highway fund allocations, and that 42, that little 2% light green one, that's the Transcat money that comes back. The committee, when we did the funding flow chart, there were these pipes headed off to the left, right off the top, that went into Transcap to pay for some Transcap bonds, and then there was some residual cash that comes back after the debt service requirements are met. That's critically important money for us because that's the money that we can put directly towards light capital paving. That's cash money. That's not bond money. That's cash money.
Could you explain Transcap for a couple? I'm sure there's some members that may not have just briefly, just give a quick explanation of that.
Yep. The Transcap Trust Fund was established at the Maine Municipal Bond Bank in 2009, I believe. I remember the bill was LD 1790 when, at the time when it happened, but its very intent, as its name implies, was to reserve some money for transportation capital purposes. It also allows revenue bonds, not GO bonds that go to the voters, but direct revenue bonds to be supported at the Municipal Bond Bank. Over the years, there have been 5 issuances totaling about $140 million from that fund. And so money comes right off the top, things like a portion of the gas tax and a portion of fees, and it heads down to the Transcap Trust Fund. They issue revenue bonds to pay debt service, and then they have to have a 2 times rule. You know, no banker ever, you know, they always make sure they're going to get their payment, right? So you have to have double the money going in than what your debt service is. And then after that is satisfied and the payments are made, the money trickles down into the DOT budget through allocation to the highway light capital for light capital paving. So
thanks.
We make it light green because it's really light cash. That's where it comes from. And it goes into capital. So that's why that's light green. And often, you know, the press and laymen will say, well, the highway fund budget, and technically the highway fund budget is just the green. But within, you know, the highway fund revenues is just the green. But obviously that's just a huge important part, but it's a little under the third of our funding pie. The next is federal formula funds. These are the this is kind of like the good old days money where they used to just pass federal bills and they had formula funds and you could rely on, and they came. They're still hugely important. You can see how big they are, 28% of the money. But federal funding is much bigger than that now. Hugely important for reliability. Next is this, it's not just for highways. The blue is the federal highway money. There's also federal funds that we receive for transit and other modes directly to us. That's the wedge that's blue. All blue of various shades is federal. We did that to try to be helpful a little bit. And we get, you know, about $49 million over this 3-year period directly to us for things like rural transit that we allocate. The next wedge, 131 million, those are funds, also transit funds and like airports and FTA funds, but those aren't received by DOT. They go directly to the agency. So this is an important wedge for some people. When you look at this wedge and you look at the sources chart that we provide with the budget, people correctly say, those don't add up exactly. How come these aren't exactly the same? This is one of the big reasons. That money does not go through the state budget process. So it's not in the state budget. So, but in the work plan, we show it. So you know what's happening. So that's why when I say we spend about 830 million a year on average from the state budget, if you multiply it by 3, there's a delta, and this is a big reason why there's a delta. The next kind of that hatched federal shown there as 191.4 or 7% over the 3 years. Those are federal discretionary competitive grants. Those came into existence longtime members of the committee will remember the federal earmarking period where it happened at the straight congressional level, and individual projects were put right into federal legislation. That fell out of favor. You know, there were some projects that of suspect value that occurred during that. Those fell out of favor, and in its place arose these competitive grants where you apply, and the Executive Branch Agency, the Federal Highway Administration, or the FTA, they rate them and score them, and you get your funding based on competition.
Senator,
Sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner, Senator Chipman has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question about the multimodal fund. So it looks like we get $52.1 million in funding from that. How much of that comes from the automobile rental tax?
Yeah, I'll get to that, but I'll jump up to it now. I just gotta. The automobile rental tax is the lion's share of it. I mean, it's gone down significantly, obviously, in recent years, but it was. I'm trying not to mess up the biennial versus annual number, but percentage-wise, it's the vast majority of it. We have a separate sheet that we can provide you, which we would provide you when we do the budget, which is coming up, that actually lists all those multimodal sources, including the car rental tax. And unfortunately, I don't have that piece of paper right in front of me. But maybe like Karen or somebody can, phone a friend with a text or something. I can get that for you in real time right here.
Great, thank you,
Senator.
Thank you.
So getting back to the discretionary grant program, that in the big yellow swath of bonding, that's really from a policy perspective. That's how things have changed at DOT. It used to be that we relied on, like a home budget, you rely on your paycheck, right? You don't rely on your bonuses to make basic payments like mortgages and utilities. We have shifted and started considering those kind of more bonus-like things as regular income, because we've had to. We apply for grants. Just on the highway side, we assume like $40-50 million a year of competitive grants. And we're not doing big, huge, they used to be for like huge projects, like one of the bridges down in Kittery or something like that. We bundled 3 or 4 interstate bridges and, decks and superstructures now. So we've come to rely on it to meet basic needs. That's great for us. We've been very successful. One of the few states, our applications are good and our delegation has been very good. And so we've been successful. I only mention that because that's kind of now one of the legs of our table for funding, and that can wobble, because that's not guaranteed. The next one's even more like that little odd bright blue wedge of 30 million. And this leads to a question I'm getting a lot lately. I hear there's going to be, a bunch of stimulus money coming from Washington and federal money. And so you're going to be rolling in it. And what are you going to do with it all? And it's kind of an odd position to be in, because on one hand, this entire work plan is built for us to be what I call in MacGyver mode. We're doing the best we can with what we have, making those tough choices we talked about. We're not swimming in it. But the questions we get is, we hear big is coming, what are you doing? The answer to that is we're going to remain agile. We're looking at outside the process you just saw. We're doing a similar thing, that if money did come, what would we do with it? How would we accelerate? How would we put more boxes on that conveyor belt to get going? It's a challenge, I will tell you, because to do that kind of thing, you have to talk to municipalities and others and say, hey, we're thinking about that, maybe this project could go, and they go, so are you doing this project? We go, well, it depends whether stuff falls from the sky, but we're kind of getting ready to do it. And so if you could help us with that, the phrase that we wish people would never use is shovel ready. These projects don't happen it takes a couple of years to get something ready to go usually. And when you get ready, if you get ready, you raise expectations. If the money doesn't come, you dash those expectations. So it's a constant balance that we're trying to do, to be ready in case something does happen. And we hope it happens, but hope is not a plan. And it actually has to materialize. So that little 30 million was us putting in a plug this year that says, geez, they're talking an awful lot about CARES Act money last year, right? That they're going to do something for state and local governments. How much do you think Maine DOT might get? Well, that was around that red table. That was like, let's plug in 30 million based on our best intel. Well, on December 27th, then President Trump signed the CRESA Act, and in it, there was money for DOTs, and it added up to 46 million. So it's like we pre-counted money before it came, and before we get excited about the 16, we're way short on light capital paving and a bunch of other things, and so that's probably where the rest is going to go. So
Senator Chipman has a question.
That wedge.
Yes, Commissioner, so in looking through the work plan, I didn't see anything in there about expansion of passenger rail service to Lewiston or any other locations. And I know that, money's tight, but I'm wondering, you just made reference to, putting together some preliminary plans for federal funds. I'm hearing there's going to be federal funds available for expanding passenger rail around the country. And I'm wondering if that's something you're thinking about, something that we might be planning for and being ready to submit requests, proposals and things like that with the federal government to be able to make Lewiston to Portland a reality?
Well, I think there's a bill on that, as you know, that we'll be discussing before the committee. And when we put together plans, we still think plans need to be long-term feasible, have good cost-benefit ratios, and be something that we could fund. Even if federal capital funds fell from the sky, you still have to operate that long-term. And as you know, there's been a preliminary study done on Lewiston Auburn, and although how people read it can vary, my interpretation is that's a challenge in terms of cost benefit and operating costs long term. And our position was from a transportation perspective. And so the last time this committee, a prior committee, looked at this, there was a belief that, well, we probably ought to do an economic feasibility study on that, find out whether there's going to be some kind of multiplier effect to the economy that we're not currently cognizant of or not fully appreciating. And we still believe that would be the right way to go and get some municipalities involved. But I'm not predetermining the outcome on that particular bill or anything, because I'll always, react to new information. But that's history on that. The next one, I'll try to speed this up because I'm spending too much time on this. The next yellow wedge in that is general obligation bonding. This is over a 3-year period, and as you can see, it kind of mimics what's been happening a while of $1 million a year. That actual 300 million is broken up in a slightly different way than the KIBI. It's not exactly just 100 million a year. It's actually like 50 million held over from last July, proposed 150 million this year, and then 100 million the next year. So again, that has become, a real solid leg of our stool. But as long-term members know, that process is very different than a budget process, and usually happens towards the end of a session and that kind of thing. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes had to see each other in the summer to get to on November bonds. And so again, we rely on that just to do things, basic needs. The next wedge is Garvey bonding. For new members of the committee, that is stands for Grant Anticipation Revenue Vehicle. They tortured the acronym to get to the name Jane Garvey, who was then the FHWA administrator. Wasn't spelled that way, by the way. But that's a federal revenue bond, and you take a percentage of that blue wedge and you dedicate it to get revenue, get bond funds quicker. Maine, I think, has been very judicious and measured in its use of Garvey bonding. There was actually a statute that this committee promoted and got passed that limits the amount of that blue wedge that you can dedicate to federal bonding to 15%. So you're not using it all. Some other states ended up kind of just taking that whole blue wedge and getting a big set of bonding. And they're largely using the federal formula funds that they get to pay debt service. Maine doesn't do that. Maine historically has done about $50 million every biennium for Garvey bonding. This one's slightly different because there was some additional capacity, one-time capacity, and the last legislature took that. And so that's why it's slightly different. And then you are into the multimodal funding that is purple. I'm sorry I didn't have that breakdown, Senator Chipman. I will get that. Car rental tax has been historically around. I did get phone from a friend, text from a friend here, Karen Doyle, and that amount has been historically around 10 million per year, but with the coronavirus, it's down around 6 or 7.
Representative Perry has a question, Commissioner.
Yep.
Representative Perry?
Commissioner, I know we're at statute for 15%, but haven't we usually tried to keep that around 10 or 11% just in case something really bad happened? Where are we at on a percentage on the Garvey?
I just asked Karen, I'll get it. Karen, phoning a friend again right now. Let's see if I get the text. But by law, you have to keep $25 million within that 15% for emergency capacity.
Yeah.
That's the law. And I think that's what you're referring to. So you don't use all 15%. You have enough so that you can float a $25 million Garvey in case of an emergency. And 25 million isn't enough for the biggest emergencies, but it's enough to get started on any emergency. And that's what it was intended to get started so that.
I know in the last couple of terms that I was there before, we tried to do a Garvey if a Garvey was coming off, just so that we didn't go right up to that 15% number.
And that's what happens. I mean, there's no, yes, that blue wedge can grow and create more capacity, but we have generally been going as they're retired. We don't, this is very measured. I will find out exactly where we are on percentage wise. And I know that $25 million in emergency capacity is there because it's the law. So I know we have that.
I know we had a lot of talk about that back
Yep.
a few years, so thank you.
Thank you. A thing. There is another kind of bonding that's not shown on here. It's that Transcap revenue bonding that I talked about over at the Maine Municipal Bond Bank. Currently in our plan, there are none contemplated in this 3-year plan. You need revenue stream to support an additional bond. So the multimodal funding, the lion's share is the car rental tax. There's also aviation fuel fees. It goes right down to the people who go to the Penobscot Observatory and pay a ticket price. Money goes into those fees. Ferry service fees go into that. And that adds up to 52 million. The next, the pink, if you will, 122, that's municipal matching funds through various projects that we have. There's a municipal share. MPI is just one of them. There are tons of other projects where it's, generally 80% federal, 10% state, and so the municipal match gets down. But you add those all up over 3 years and it's real money, from municipalities. That's another amount that it is shown in the budget. But it's not really state revenue, if you will. It's coming from municipalities. It comes through us. And
Senator Farron has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Commissioner, you just mentioned on the multimodal, you was talking about the funding sources, and you mentioned the ferry service, right? So we had a bill Tuesday, I guess, talking about putting in statute the service to Frenchboro. I just want to talk a little bit, or asked, I think Megan testified something to the fact that it's 50% subsidized by the general, by the highway fund, and then the ferry service does the other 50%. Are we following that? Is that formula holding as true as we can? And how would some of these bills maybe impact that?
Yeah, when we got into the uses of funds portion that I was about to hit,
Sorry, Will. You said ask questions. No.
No, I'll answer it right now. The answer is yes. It's statutorily set to be 50-50. With the virus and the reduction in revenue, we've used CARES Act, some federal transit funding to add to that subsidy. And it's more like, 70-30 now, subsidy, state and federal versus fare box right now. Although I just got a report that said ridership on the ferry service was only down 8% last week, which is the best that's been for a long time. So maybe, who knows, a week doesn't make a trend, but it wasn't as bad as the rest. So I will talk a little bit more about that very briefly. And I'm going to just wrap up. The rest is, there is an other. I know other always engenders question. It's a very small wedge there. And the 130 on the top is pulls forward, stuff that was programmed before. That's another big reason this wedge doesn't match the one we give you before, because sometimes capital program is a long-term thing and money rolls forward, and that 130 represents that wedge of money that rolls forward. So with that, I'm going to hit on, that's where the money comes from. I spent a lot of time on that because that's largely where the committee and us talk about where can money come from. On the uses of funds, I'm going to keep it pretty high level. Just want to make sure I'm not getting, no, I'm okay. In simplest terms, this wedge is intended, this is by our work program codes. That big gray wedge of 53%, that's highway and bridge capital. That's where a big chunk of our money goes. The purple wedge there, that's multimodal capital. So if you add those two together, that's 66% of what we do is capital in nature. And that really is something that distinguishes DOT from other agencies. We are a capital production organization. The next wedge that you see in orange or yellow, depending on your screen or your, that's intended to be like an orange cone. That's highway and bridge maintenance and operations. That's all the operations, plow drivers, all the people. We have 400 plow trucks, a lot more heavy equipment than that, 1,100 crews statewide, and all that management. The next 210, that's multimodal operations. That's a lot of that is federal money, FTA grants, part of that 52 that you saw come in. But so that's money going to various modes, transit programs, the Downeaster and all that. The 89 million is those two wedges at the top. No one likes to hear overhead, but that pink wedge really is an overhead. That's the system management. Those are people like Andy's group and all those committees that you see that make sure how we're spending money, we're doing the best we can with what we have. Without it, you're flying blind. And so we collect a lot of data, pavement condition, a lot of other information, obviously bridge inspections and all that. And that just makes sure we're spending the money wisely in the right place. And the blue wedge, the 3% would be, that's over. I'm in there, let's put it that way. So it must be overhead. So that's, legal, HR, all those standard kind of things. So that's where the money goes, broken down, we'll kind of talk more about highway and bridge versus multimodal, because that's where historically the committee has been interested in, and I'll hand it off to Andy to start talking about widgets and production levels on the highway and bridge side?
Yeah, so these are standard graphs that have been in the work plan introduction now for quite a few years. I know most of you have seen these if you've looked at the work plan in the past. We have had a red line on here that was dedicated to unmet need for each individual asset class. This year, we went to really looking at the trend of the widget production or the number of units of work that we're producing, given the funding that we have. A couple of reasons for that is just the uncertainty of funding right now. The department's also re-looking at highway corridor priority designations and looking to it, and you'll see expanding some of the programs that we have here. So really this red line now is looking at the past 3 years of units of work. And in the case of bridge, that's bridge projects as a unit of work. So we're looking strictly at the number of bridge projects. And you can see, you know, over the last 3 years, we've averaged 69 projects. And, you know, each of the 3 years is going to be less than that this time. While still investing heavily, the projects, there are less projects. We do have some big bridges going on now. And really one of the things this demonstrates is our reliance on that discretionary grant funding that Bruce alluded to before, especially in the bridge arena. We're looking at some of the bigger projects are funded through those discretionary grants. And that's what this dash line is in the third year, anticipated grants that we will apply for. So that could bring our funding total to nearly 192 million in the third year. We still have a base program for bridges. There's no question about that. But we look to augment that base program with discretionary grants. As far as highway construction and rehabilitation, so this is the major highway work that we do, reconstruction of roadways. You can think of this as actually moving dirt. We're not just paving it, we're out there excavating, we're moving dirt and reconstructing the roadway. Last 3 year average is 47 miles. Again,
Representative Perry has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, just real quick, the India Bruce, where are we on the high level bridge project for Portsmouth for redecking?
It's going well. I mean, it's in construction, and they're about to go to add a phase so that we could use the shoulders seasonally, you know, to add some capacity down there. It's on schedule. Last I knew, that's like a $55 million, $53 million project. That is one where traffic reduction due to the coronavirus allowed some kind of good time to be made. I'll find out exactly. I know Craig. I know the resident who's down there. I can give him a call and find out. But let's put it this way: if there was a problem with it, I would already know.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so it must be going according to plan.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
One thing to hit on that, obviously that's kind of a weird looking chart with a big, huge green spike of money and not many miles. That's because within that, the I-395 Route 9 connector, you know, in Brewer, is to be done. That's 100 million of it right there. And for miles, you only get credited like 5 or 6 miles. That actually has 19 structures and 40 feet of pavement during that stretch. It's really the only new capacity we have in this work plan. I am sometimes asked, and it's a legitimate question, why are you still doing that? The reason is there was a whole bunch of federal money lined up to do that. That's in a use it or lose it mode if you don't do it. And also, it would not only affect that money. One of the reasons we've been so successful in getting federal competitive grants is that we've always used the money they gave us when we said for what we said. We're very reliable, if you will, and that works well with the agencies that score because they want to look good too. They want to say they gave a grant and everything happened the way they said. So, and it's a set system need that's been there for a long time. It's been debated for literally decades, and it's due to go out to bid this fall. So that accounts for that huge, big green spike in the highway construction widget graph.
Go ahead, Representative Perry.
Yeah, real quick on that, talk about new capacity. Has there been any more talk about 295? And is there going to be a real issue there once the turnpike goes 3 lanes all the way to Falmouth?
There hasn't been, quite honestly, this, pandemic happened, and that has affected traffic levels short term, but it may have affected them longer term, and we don't know that yet. How much will people actually telework when they're going into offices? So I think that will slow down that debate. It will never eliminate it. Eventually this will be a discussion again.
Yeah.
But I think we need to let things settle for a year or two to figure out where we're going from here. Get some.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's a 5 or 10 year out project anyway, but
Yeah, yeah,
I
but
know
this
before
might
it's
have
always,
turned it to 12 or 15, who knows, right? We don't
Yeah.
know. Yep.
Representative O'Connell has a question.
Commissioner, I understand the federal money was 25 million on the 395 connector. Is that correct?
Certain kind, the total federal money was more than that, but that's stuff that's discretionary to use it or lose it that you're talking about. Yes.
And what was the remainder of the state funds from that project needed?
Andy, 40? I'm trying to figure out exactly
It's
where
right
it was.
in that neighborhood. I don't have the exact dollar amount with you,
Yeah,
with me. And I'm sharing my screen, so I can't quite look that up right at the moment. But yes, it's right in that neighborhood, Bruce.
And at this point, it's totaled at what's the total cost for that project at this time?
Total project value is over 100. The construction cost would be close to more like 70. Design and right-of-way acquisition accounts for the bulk of the difference. I know you have constituents there that are going to pick apart every number I give, so I would like to be able to follow up with every chapter and verse to add that up. I'm just giving you I'm in the ballpark of what I'm saying.
Right.
Now. I'd like to answer in real time when I can.
Well, thank you. I was just digging that out of my heart and soul, those questions. So
Yeah, no,
I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time.
No, I appreciate the question. Andy.
Yes, moving on to pavement preservations, our next category, and we can see again lower widgets, and these really do have a lot more meaning to them. This is the number of miles that we're paving with our pavement preservation program. You can see in 21 we're down considerably, and if you remember a year or two ago, we were in front of the committee and talking about the inflation of paving costs, and this is where you're seeing that come to fruition in these next 3 years. And as a result of that, the department's looking at expanding that light capital paving program in this work plan to cover some of those miles that aren't getting done in pavement preservation. So we're averaging 725 miles projected, as opposed to the 600 in previous years.
Andy, go back to the pavement preservation. I just want to explain. We're gonna shift to multimodal and unmet need, and I know we're short on time already. But that red line, that was at my direction that I said, I don't know exactly what our unmet need is right now. If we did it based on the numbers that we had from the Blue Ribbon Commission, those red lines would be higher. I'm just telling you, if the line was unmet need, what we should be doing, it would be higher. And so I said, well, let's just try to give something that people can relate to. What was the average of what we've done the last 3 years, looking forward for the 3 years coming forward? So that's the line you see there. And that's why it's there. Just to try to give yes, there's unmet need that has some value judgments of what we're trying to accomplish and all that stuff that we work with the committee and our statutory goals. But this is that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years and how we're doing in relation to that. Andy, you all set?
Yes.
I'm gonna go relatively as quick as I can through the multimodal overview. Maine DOT largely owns and controls the asset on the highway side, so we have the ability to kind of say what we're gonna do, and it's kind of one owner, if you will, and because of that control, we can tell a cleaner picture. The multimodal side, we have a lot of different owners, a lot of different users, a lot of different agencies, and so the process of how it happens is not as, it's not all those people sitting nice cleanly in a room there, right? It's individual meetings and conversations. But the overview is we still spend a very significant amount of money on multimodal capital. You saw that 358 over 3 years in capital and 210 for operating on that uses chart. Big picture, just by mode, air, we spend a lot of money. This is almost all federally funded, almost all FAA. The state portion is a fraction of it, but there's 82 projects worth $89 million happening airports, and those vary. Most people think we only have 2 airports, 3 airports. You know, we have 30 general aviation airports and 6 commercial, and those range from a $10,000 shoulder repair in Bangor up to a $13 million runaway project at Portland International Airport, and everything in between. So, and those are all listed in the work plan. And then airports receive tens of millions of dollars directly from the FAA for operating. Transit, kind of the next most used mode. There's 67 capital projects worth like $90 million. And again, those vary from a $23 million Acadia Gateway project, which has been long coming in Trenton, to down to $110,000 bus purchase by a transit agency. Lots of projects. There's 420 public transit vehicles in the state of Maine, and they all have to be eventually replaced. In transit, in the operating side, it's like 109 items worth $135 million. Again, most of it received directly by the agency from the FTA. I see a lot of hands up, Mr. Chairman. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was copying something else, so I was waiting. Representative Williams has a question. Representative Williams?
Yeah, I was unmuting.
That's okay.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. Commissioner, first of all, I want to compliment you on the Route 3 project in Bar Harbor. It went so smoothly and the workers were fabulous. So thank you to the whole department. I have 2 questions, both involving rail. The first is, it was my understanding, and I'm new and I'm trying to read, everything, but it's my understanding that the vehicle rental fees were supposed to go towards rail. And it appears, at least from what I've read, that the majority of them are not. And my second question is, it's also my understanding that the department is required every 5 years to do a rail plan. And I've been told that that is now overdue. So perhaps you could comment on this, both of these. Thank you.
Sure. It's the echoes of Tony Donovan. The legislature decides where the money comes and goes. That car rental tax went into a multimodal fund that could be used for multimodal. This committee can decide where it wants to go, and if it wants to dedicate it all to rail, it can. And I do understand the passionately held belief that it's owed to passenger rail. I believe that a more balanced multimodal approach might be, it is more prudent from my perspective, trying to take care of everything. But I work for you in terms of that kind of policy, and wait to hear. The rail plan, I will check. We are supposed to do a rail plan periodically. I honestly didn't know it was on a 5-year cycle. But we do lots of plans all the time, and if we have one coming, we would willingly do it. That's not anything we're trying to not do. So it is an interesting time to do long-term plans. I will tell you that, with everything changing and not knowing where up is right now. It almost feels like you're hiring a financial planner right after you've been laid off a little bit. But you do have to think long-term. We think in terms of years and years and decades. So if there's one do, we'll be doing it.
Thank you, sir.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Senator Chipman has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. So just in talking about what you were just mentioning with the 30 airports around the state, and, you know, we're all well aware of, you know, the 2 or 3 that get used a lot, but there is a lot of smaller airports. I guess it just, for me, it kind of begs the question of how many people is served for every dollar spent on any of these projects, whether it's roads, bus service, rail service, or airports. I'm wondering, does the department do any sort of analysis or comparison when we're allocating funds and putting together a budget about how many people is served for every dollar spent at one of these 30 airports versus a rail project versus a road project? You know, because to me, it seems like we should be prioritizing our funding and spending money in ways that benefits the most number of people. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't fund 30 airports, but I'm just wondering how many people are using these other 27 airports that probably a lot of us don't even know about, you know, and is there consideration for that, I guess I'd say. And if there isn't, I would really stress that we should be considering that since dollars are scarce. That's one question. And then the other question that I believe in the rail plan, there's discussion about the Merrimeeting Trail project and allowing a rail line to be used for a trail. And I think we had a bill on that in this committee that we actually voted on not to pass on. So I'm wondering why that showed up in the 3-year rail plan.
That's not actually, there was a separate, well, in series, yes, we do take into consideration dollars per person. We also have to take into consideration the rules that lawmakers and appropriators put on the money. FAA money is meant to be used for airports. We can't use it for other things, and it's federal money. Okay. But you're a person pining after my own heart about that kind of analysis, that we should make sure dollars per person served is a consideration. If you did that, and I know, you know, there's a lot of passion for various modes, and I'm modally agnostic. That's what I have to say. I'm into anything that works, you know, and if it works, and long term, I tend to think long term, not something that works just this year. But the highway and bridge system by far, you know, carries more people and serves more people over the long term. That obviously has climate change impacts with fossil fuels. I think the changing in propulsion to electric will largely eventually resolve that issue. And I think this is I'm visioning now with you. I mean, anyone can tell me a different vision. I think we're going to have individual vehicles in most of Maine because of its rural nature for a long time, but they're just going to be propelled a different way and they're not going to pollute. The airports and all those airports, there's actually 212 airports right down to a strip statewide, but there's only 30 general aviation airports. So that's why I mentioned those. And then there's only 6 commercial, and most people can only name 3. When push comes to shove. I'm guessing Representative Williams could name the one right in Trenton, but others might not if they don't go down that neck of the woods. This Prescott, I'm not going to embarrass myself. I think I can name all 6 of the commercial.
Start with Holton.
Bangor and Portland. So your second question, I'm sorry, I lost it, Senator.
About the Merrimeeting, so we had a bill about allowing the Merrimeeting trail, a rail line to be used to create a Merrimeeting trail, and I believe voted that bill ought not to pass in this committee, and I believe it's now in the 3-year rail plan, and I'm just wondering why that is. If we voted down a bill to do that, why it would now be in the rail plan? I mean, not the rail.
I'll check with what that happened. There was also an administration bill that set up a process to weigh the relative competing uses of a rail corridor. A rail corridor stays a rail corridor always. It ultimately will, you know, it will always be reserved for a rail corridor. The question is a interim trail use appropriate in certain cases? I believe it can be in certain cases. I know that runs counter to rail advocates that say you should never let anyone else on that corridor. I know there are trail advocates that say we should use all of them if there's no active traffic for trails. I don't believe in that either. I believe you have to have a case-by-case analysis. And that's why the governor, through the agency, through us, the governor put in a bill last year calling for that kind of individual weighing on a case-by-case basis. That actually was passed and was headed, but got derailed with the, the quick adjournment that happened. And so given that, that's the policy that we could do. We went to the legislature to discuss it with you to make sure that that was an approach that you were comfortable with. It's allowed, and it's not illegal for the DOT to take that kind of a individual case-by-case approach where you set up an advisory committee where you get rail advocates, trail advocates, local business people, local government people, and you have an advisory committee and they make a recommendation to the commissioner as to what should happen there. I think that's still a solid process, and that's why you see it in the work plan for Merry Meeting Trail.
So Commissioner, if I can follow up as I may, so that the bill that to allow the department to look at all the rail lines and make recommendations didn't pass the full legislature because we adjourned before that had a chance to happen. So that didn't become law. Maybe it would have, who knows, but it didn't become law, and we did vote down the bill to turn the rail line into a trail in the Merry Meeting corridor. So I just was a little bit struck to see the Merry Meeting plan in the 3-year work plan, given what had happened last session. And I know it's in there, and I guess I would encourage you to take that out and allow the process to happen. Was the process followed for, like you just described, before putting it in the work plan for Merry Meeting?
That's money, so that process will happen. That's not to construct anything on the Merry Meeting Trail. It's to have the very debate you just talked about.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Continue.
Sure. I look to you, I look to both chairmen. I see what time we're at, and I'm an accordion. I can stop talking anytime you want.
I think another 10 or 15 would give you enough time to give us all that.
Absolutely. I just wanted to find out what.
I know some other people had some things going, so that's good. Thank you.
Sure. Following along multimodal, also rail is, if you add up everything that's going on in rail, it's to the tune of almost $100 million, 30 projects. That includes almost entirely federal funded rehab of the Pan Am line from Yarmouth to Waterville, which is in process, but CSX is the likely acquirer of Pan Am. By the way, that's big news, on both opportunities, and to make sure it goes well. One, it will open up, it's a Class 1 railroad that'll open up the East Coast, but we have to make sure that the Downeaster is protected and that our operation agreement is protected. Also, by the way, the main Montreal and Atlantic a while ago was purchased by CP, Canadian Pacific, another Class 1 railroad that takes us to points west. So the rail system is definitely poised to connect us well. Also included is a Wells platform signing for the Downeaster at the tune of $23 million. And there's operating funds in there for NEPRA as well. $37.5 million over 3 years, roughly $12 million a year, which is broken down with $2 million of CMAQ, $2 million from that multimodal account, and $8.5 million from federal funds. I think that accounts for some of the feedback you're getting, Representative William and Senator Chitman, on the car rental tax. That should all be going to trains. It used to, the state subsidy used to be so much bigger, the state subsidy, but by reporting the traveler miles of the Downeaster to the FTA, we were able to increase federal funding significantly. So that's now $8.5 million from FTA funding. So the Downeaster's getting its full subsidy. Now the question of, trying to earmark that so that you could expand passenger rail elsewhere, I get it. Those are all, policy judgments that we have to make as we move forward. So I look forward to working with you on that. Ferries, there's 23 projects worth $41 million capital, 30 million for the Main State Ferry Service, including two new vessels that total 19 million. The operating cost is it costs just over $12 million a year to run the Main State Ferry Service to serve the 6 islands in Penobscot Bay that are served by it. Half of that historically has come from highway funding, and the other half has come from farebox. Over the last year, that subsidy has grown because of lack of revenue and the availability of CARES Act money, federal special money for transit, which, by the way, is keeping transit agencies statewide open. That's not unique to the Main State Ferry Service to get some help. All transit services are running, and the Downeaster are running because of CARES Act money. That increased to close to, like I said, 70-30 for right now, but we expect that to adjust back. So I don't know if there's, Senator Farron, if there's anything else at this point you wanted to ask about the ferry, so if you're good to go, okay. Ports and harbors, again, 25 projects, capital projects for 27 million. This includes the $5.5 million maintenance dredge at Mac Point in Searsport. I only mention that because we've been working on that for 9 years now to get the permits and the money to do that. There is an old bond, the last bond that used to earmark specific projects that we still have left is for this dredge. And it's one of the reasons we don't put specific projects in the bonds anymore, because it can take 8 years to get a permit sometimes and line up the federal funding. So that's a maintenance dredge. It's only 22,000 square yards. It's a very small dredge comparatively to other dredges. Think of it as like the light capital paving of dredging. It's just taken enough off to keep the thing serviceable. Shifting to Portland, there's 8 million. The remainder of 8 million in here for the cold storage facility on the Portland waterfront. That project is going through some challenges right now. Some bids came in high, and we're finding a way to do it. I expect we may have to invest a little bit more there to get that done. But the good news there is that's only the state portion. The overall project cost is much more than that, and it's coming from private sector. That is, so they're putting their money down in the Portland waterfront. So we hope to be able to brief you more on that later. So that's what's going on the multimodal side, and I talk about that more. My job is not always what you might expect. Most people think that you're constantly thinking highways and bridges when you're the DOT commissioner. It does carry 87% of freight traffic and 93% of passengers or more do the highway and bridge. But I've got a lot of smart people that, as we just described, take care of that. I would say that 2/3 to a half, 2/3 to 3/4 of a commissioner's time is spent on multimodal issues. Because my experience is that not everyone's modally agnostic. Some people are rail advocates, some people are trail advocates, some people are bus advocates, some people are passenger rail advocates, some people are freight rail advocates, some people are port advocates. And it's kind of like, it's all one system. A port is just a spigot to a pipe that's coming either by truck or by rail. It all has to work together. And so we spend a lot of time on that. So which is why I wanted to spend a little time talking about it, because I expect a lot of your policy effort is also wrapped up in those things. So I wanted to make sure I talked about that. To wrap up quickly, because I know we're tardy, is the unmet need discussion, and it won't take anywhere, as I know there are members of this committee now that were on the Blue Ribbon Commission that looked at what the unmet need was at DOT. And at the time, multimodally, it was identified during the course of 2019, but put in the final report of the Blue Ribbon Commission that it was $232 million per year. And that was assuming $100 million in bonding every year continues. We are, then the pandemic hit. And I do believe this isn't a long-term thing, but I'm not sure. Right now, we're down 30 million from biennium to biennium based on reduced revenues, highway fund revenues, largely fuel tax. So that made a tough situation worse. But we are also undergoing what I would call kind of MacGyver mode 2, where you just saw the first start of it. We're saying, are there ways that we can take care of this vast multimodal system spread all over the state of Maine with the same population in New Hampshire, 1.3 million, in a more cost-effective per mile way? So we're looking at, the honest answer to you right now is I don't know. The charge was, can we bring that 232 down? Can we bring it down by how we do things? I don't know. And now compounded is some of the coronavirus pandemic effects through telework or otherwise permanent, which means highway fund revenue might be down permanent. I don't know. Electrification is definitely coming. And so we're going to have to be looking out for that. So that's one of the reasons you saw the red line on the widget charts that Andy went over. We just made it historical because we are in a self-evaluation mode of a time of great change. And I think now is not the time to be making broad pronouncements exactly of what things are, because I think anyone who claims they know what things are lacks humility or honesty. And we try to have both. So I think right now, I think I've mentioned to the committee that you will find no one that thinks we are going to need more transportation revenue at some point. Revenue, not bonding, not federal grants, we're going to need more revenue at some point. It's a pandemic. Now is not the time to be trying to do that. It won't happen to start with. And I think we risk losing the discussion. So for the next year or two, we're in MacGyver mode, and we're going to evaluate that need and find out. And then after we recover and we have better facts and we can talk about what we can do at DOT versus what needs to be done with policy help from you and others, I'll definitely be back, but I just think the next year or two would be the wrong time to be trying to do it. Too many things are moving at once. It's like trying to balance a house of cards on a merry-go-round right now, and just probably not now is the best time to be making broad pronouncements. We have a very significant unmet need. I think the Blue Ribbon Commission report probably averages out, between what we can do to save money versus what the virus might do to cost money. It may roughly average out. But the honest answer is we don't know right now, and we think we owe that to you before we have any discussion about trying to do something about funding. And I think that's going to take a year or two. So that's what I had, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for running over. We don't like doing that. But we very much appreciate all your time and attention and the questions. We enjoy it. It's strange. I feel very weird sitting in my dining room talking to you. I'm supposed to be standing at a podium in a horseshoe, and I feel much more comfortable there, strangely, than I do right here.
It's a little weird for us as well.
Yeah.
We really want to thank you. I just want to say that we do have the here and now we have to deal with. And we have the situation before us that we have to get through this year and next. Not to say that as you mentioned, that planning isn't important, but I think it's going to take all of our energy and our creativity to get through these next 2 years in terms of the department funding and all that we have to deal with and all the competing factors we have to deal with. So I concur with what you said in terms of how we approach this and how we can approach it, at least in some ways. So thanks for that. Chair Martin has a question as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, a great presentation, much appreciated. If you get a chance, would you have Megan give me a call regarding a good sized project that you've got ongoing right now between Maine and New Brunswick and Madawaska? Not that we have to discuss this today, but I'd just like an update on that.
Sure. In fact,
by the way?
if I could, Mr. Chairman, that actually your question highlights the conveyor belt nature of our work. That's probably one of the between I-395, Madawaska is the next big thing going on in Maine, that bridge. You didn't hear me talk about that at all, and it for a very technical reason. And I'm glad you said that to highlight that. We advertised that for bid 10 days last December. That was part of the last work plan because that's when we advertised it.
Right.
We advertised it we haven't even awarded it yet. We haven't even got the bids yet.
Just that was my question. So.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to call you right after, Mr. Chairman, and give you an update personally on that.
Right.
I've been getting briefings on that. I think all is well. Stuff's happening on the other side of the border, like it tends to do in these international projects.
Yeah,
but I think we'll overcome it.
Senator Diamond, do we have an idea who will be zooming in with appropriations this afternoon? I'm unable to attend.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it either. Anybody, it's a good question. Any committee member planning on Zooming attendance at the appropriations committee this afternoon?
Thank you.
Senator Diamond, I might be on. VLA's on there too, so I'm probably going to have it on at least in the background listening as soon as we're done here.
Okay, thank you, Senator Farren. Anyone else? Just so we have somebody there, and that's fine. Thank you for that. Chair Martin, anything else on your side?
No, I just want to add that's a great presentation, and clearly we got some well-intentioned and very well. We've got some great committee members with a lot of institutional knowledge that I'm going to need, and that's why I've been rather quiet, and that's very unusual for me. But I'm just listening and learning. And Senator Farren, thank you for presenting LD 40 earlier in the week. Much appreciated.
No problem, Mr. Chair. I think he just called Senator Diamond and Senator Perry old institutional knowledge. That's right.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, first meeting, I think we have the most experienced committee in terms of years spent. I mean, we have 100 years of legislative experience and 44 years of committee experience. It's really what you say, Chair Martin. That really is, I think it's a little bit unusual, even for you and I to say that after the years we've been around.
Yeah. Well, you and I have served together, 40 years ago? So
yeah. Anyway, well, thank you very much. Appreciate everything. Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Sam's got his hand raised.
Okay, Sam. Yes, I got to move you up so I can see. Yes, Sam.
Thanks, Senator Diamond. Yeah, I just wanted to remind anyone who decides later they would like to watch the AFA hearing this afternoon, but is not able to attend. They should all end up recorded on the committee's YouTube page as well. So you can go back and listen to it after the fact.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Good point. And also a reminder that on Tuesday of next week, we have a work session, a first, and it'll be for the bills we heard Tuesday, the LDs 40, 43, 45, 73. So we'll be reporting out some of those, maybe all. We'll see how it goes, but be ready for that. And anything else, Sam or Chair Martin or anybody else we need to anything else to say?
No,
if not,
good.
thank you all. Yes, thank you all very much. We appreciate everybody and all those great questions and the information from the department. It was very, very well done. As Chair Martin said, it really was helpful to get some of these comments. Thank you. Good night. Good afternoon. Have a nice
Very
weekend.
good. Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.